Genesis 24, 2 through 4 says, And Abraham said to his servant, the oldest of his household, who had charge over all that he owned, Please place your hand under my thigh. I will make you swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and the God of earth, that you shall not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I live, but you will go to my country and to my relatives and take a wife for my son Isaac. Well, if you're joining us in reading through this 90-day reading plan, today's reading is Genesis chapter 23, 1 through 24, 61. I encourage you to read that passage. In these three verses above lie a truth that Paul also laid out in 1 Corinthians 7. A couple who marries must have a commonality on which to base their marriage. Without that commonality, the marriage may be doomed from the very start. Now, why is it smart to marry someone who has the same basic thinking as you do? Why would you want to marry someone who has the same basic morals and morality that you do? Why can't two opposites find their way into a happy marriage? Now, I'm not suggesting that marriage between a believer and a non-believer is an impossibility. It certainly is more difficult, but it is possible to have a happy marriage. But how can two individuals who do not have the same standards and the same outlook on life have the same goals in their marriage? Before I was able to marry Tony, the Bishop of Athens required that I become Greek Orthodox. His thinking was certainly sound, and had he had his way, I would have been required to spend 2 years learning about Orthodoxy before I got married. But expediency, because of my limited time in Greece and my being in the military, won the day. But the first year and probably the second year of our marriage was much more difficult until Tony and I became the same page as to our relationship with God. Now, Abraham did something he felt was necessary. He did not want Isaac to marry a local girl. He wanted Isaac to have a bride who had a similar background and thought in the same way. Is that what we want for our children? Is that what we want for our own life? Well, I'd probably say yes. It certainly is. But circumstances may dictate that your spouse or your children's spouse may not think the same way and have the same relationship with God. Scripture is clear. We're to guide our spouses and children to a relationship with Christ by what we do, not necessarily and certainly not exclusively by what we say. How we live our lives makes a difference, not what we say